Hello everyone, welcome back to our Complete ABAP plus HANA course on Srijan Institute and Training Center YouTube channel. So till now we have discussed the various kinds of concepts of our data dictionary chapter. Now in this part we will see the concept of indexes. So what is an index? Before directly understanding its technical concept, let's take a example of our real world. Suppose I have a book and the book does not have any index and I want to read a particular topic. Then in that situation, I will have to start reading the book from the beginning because I don't have the idea where that topic lies on in my book. And let's suppose that the book consists of around 1000 pages. So if my topic lies on 760th page and I don't have that idea, then I will have to go to each topic to read it. But if the book have some index, then we can directly refer the topic and it will save us a lot of time. So what is the use of the index? So an index is created to give the high performance. So if we are creating any particular index, what it is going to do? It will give us the high performance. When you have an index and you write a select query, then by default your performance is increased because you have a particular index. Suppose this my screen is HANA database and let's take an example that my table exists in this particular section only. So if I am going to fetch the data, my compiler will directly go to this particular section and it will be able to fetch the record. But let's take another example that my data is being distributed throughout the entire database. So if my compiler is now going to fetch out the record, it has no idea where my data exists, so it will have to go to each part and then it will be able to fetch the record. So in the second case, the time consumption will be more. That is why if your data is stored in a particular section and you already have the idea where it is stored, like you already have the address of the data, then you will directly go to that particular section and you will be able to fetch the record. So when you have an index and you write a select query, then by default your performance is going to be increased. Whenever an index is created in SAP, the index always stores data in sorted order. So what is the meaning of sorted order here? So if your data is stored in a unsorted order like 5, then after 1, then 2, and then after 11, then 7, 8, like this, then it will become a really difficult task to understand where my data actually is stored. But if my data is stored like this manner, let's take example. Uh, let's open something else. Yeah, now let's see this. If my data is stored like this, I can directly go to this fifth row and I can fetch out the fifth record. But if my same data is stored like this, 1, 6, 4, 3, 5, 3, then it will become really difficult for me to know where my exact data is. So that is why what index is going to do, it is created to give us the high performance, and by default it is going to store the data in sorted order. So if there will be no index, then SAP will have to go to each data one by one and it will be a very time consuming process. Now when you are going to create a index in SAP, a index name will be always 3 character long. So when we are going to implement it, we will see it. Now the question comes in our mind, how many types of indexes are there? So basically there are two kinds of indexes. The first one is primary index and the second one is secondary index. In case of primary index, whenever you create a table, you are going to mark a primary key for you. So primary key will act as a primary index. That is, whenever you are marking a particular column as a primary key, SAP by default is going to create a default primary index for it. So whenever you will search data based on primary key, and since it is a index, therefore the performance will be high automatically. So whenever you mark a column as a primary key in your table, SAP automatically creates a by default primary index for it, and whenever you are going to fetch data on primary key, and since it is an index, therefore the performance will be by default high. Now what is the secondary index? So based upon the requirement, we are going to create a secondary indexes for us, like based upon the requirement, whatever the requirement your user is going to give to you, you are going to create a secondary index for it. And there can be requirement where we will have to search record based on non-primary key. Then in that situation we can create our secondary indexes so that we can improve the performance of our SAP system. So these are the two kinds of indexes. Primary key is by default primary index, and based on the requirement you are going to create your secondary index. Now the first question comes to your mind should be, if the advantage of the index is that it is going to increase the performance, then what is its disadvantage? So index will always occupy some space on the database layer. So if you are going to create any index, what it is going to do, it will by default occupy some space on the database layer. So this is a bigger disadvantage because it is going to occupy a space. So let's start creation of our index so that we can understand it more clearly. First I will go to my table, employee table, and what I can see here is not this one, employee tab, yeah, this one. And in this table what we can see here, our employee ID is the primary key. Now if let's take a requirement to create a index for our employee name. So what we are going to do in this situation, we will create a index for this particular column employee ID. So let's start with the creation part. How you are going to create it? So what we will do, we will go to SE11 transaction code and we will open our table in change mode. Simply follow the steps. You will go to SE11 transaction code, you will give the name of your table, you will select this radio button and you will click on this change button. Now the second step for the creation part will be, we will click on the index tab and then we will click on create button. You can see here there is a index tab, simply click on it, and now you can see here no indexes currently exist for our table because we don't have created any index for us. So to create an index, you will simply click on this create button and you will go for this create index. Now here a pop-up screen is coming for index name, and by default I have told you the length of your index is going to be 3 characters. So what you will do, you will give a name for your index. So let's suppose I am giving for employee name as ENM and I will click on OK button. Then our index section will be opened in change mode, where we will first provide a short description. So I am going to give a short description as index for employee name. Now the next thing here is what we are going to do. First we will select the fields. So here you can see table field section, and whatever fields that you want you can select it by clicking on it. So let's suppose I am selecting here employee name and I will click on copy button. So by default my employee name is coming. Now you can see this message, index does not exist in database system HDB. So currently my index system does not exist in database system. Is this HDB means HANA database. Now simply click on save button and click on activate button. So as soon as you will click on activate button, and when your index is going to be activated, you will see here index table name tilde operator index name exist in database system. Now your index is existing in the database system, so now you can use it. So now if you are going to write a select query based on your employee name column, based on this particular employee name column, then by default your performance is going to be increased. So this is a really great way to increase the performance of our queries, increase the performance of our databases so that we can fetch the record. Now The next thing is how an index is stored on the database layer. So you can see here index is being stored as table name, tilde operator, index name. So index is going to be stored in this way on your database layer, table name, tilde operator and index name. Now some important point related to indexes. You can see here we have 3 radio buttons and currently my radio button is index on all database system. So if your server is connected to multiple databases, then for each database this particular index is going to be created. Now if you don't, suppose there you have around 4 to 5 databases connected to your system, but you don't want that your index should be created for all databases. So what you can do, you can use this particular radio button for selected database system, and only in that particular database which you are going to select, your index will be created. So you will simply click on this particular button and here you will click on F4 button, and according to the requirement you can select the index where you want your index to be stored. Then we have this no database index, and this is really important radio button. So let's take a requirement. You have created this index, but you currently there is no need of index for long period of time. So what you can do, you can select this radio button no database index and click on activate button, and you can see here this message as index does not exist in database system HDB. Your index has been created, but currently it does not exist in your database system HDB because you have selected this particular radio button as no database index. So suppose in nearby future we don't need this index. Currently I have created the index, but so let's take a requirement that in nearby future we do not need this particular index. So what we can do in that situation, we can simply select this particular we can simply select this radio button no database index, and because of that my index will not occupy any space on the database layer. I have created the index, and since it is not occupying the data space on the database layer, then there is no need to delete this particular index. Let's suppose in future whenever there will be a requirement that we need this index, I will simply come and I will select this radio button and I will click on activate button. So by default now my index will be stored on my databases which I am going to select. So this is a very beautiful concept in our index, that if currently you do not need this index, you don't need to delete this, you can simply select this particular radio button no database index and you can activate your index. So by default it will not occupy any space on the database layer, and if in future you will require this index, you can come and select the radio button according to the requirement. So this is the concept of index, and if you still want to delete it, you can click on it and you can click on the delete button, and yes, so index will be deleted. Now you can see here no index is found for your table. You can go open your table and currently you can see no index exists for your table. So this was the concepts of index. Thank you very much for watching these videos, and don't forget to like and share the video. We will meet again in the next part. So till then, keep learning.